Today I'm interviewing my pop-up Ralph Storty, who is in the Vietnam War. Okay, the first question is, were you a volunteer soldier or were you drafted into the war?
When I got out of high school, they had the Vietnam War and there was the draft, and I decided that I wanted to join and pick the branch of service I was going to be in.
How old were you when this event took place?
I was 19 years old, not quite 20, but I was 19.
So were most of the soldiers young?
When I was in the service, just about probably 3/4 or maybe 7/8 of our battalion were all young recruits. We did have some older petty officers and some older officers, but most of them were in their early 20s.
What division of the armed forces were you in?
I was a United States Navy Seabee. We were like the Army Corps of Engineers. We did construction.
What were your thoughts and feelings when going into the war?
Well, I realized that there were some problems overseas that might affect us in our country, and I just thought that the right thing to do was to, offer my services and do what I could to try to contribute to make sure that things were always safe here at home.
Did you know much about the war before serving in it? If so, what did you know?
Well, I didn't know too much. The only information I had was what most Americans had, which was what they read in the newspapers and what they saw on TV news at night.
When you first arrived in Vietnam, what were your thoughts and feelings then?
Well, I was a young kid. I was 19 years old. I was a little afraid. There was a war going on. When I was there were close to 500,000 men and women that were serving our country. During the Vietnam War, there were 55,700 and some men and women that died. And I didn't know what my destiny was. I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what I was going to encounter. And I was afraid just like everybody else.
Question 6 is, while you were in Vietnam, what did you miss most about the United States?
Well, probably my family. That was the most important thing to me. And I was hoping that after my tour of duty, I would have the opportunity to come home and see my family again. So that was on my mind every single day I was there. Be safe.
Were you married to Mom at that point?
No, we were not married. Matter of fact, I did not even know Mom back then. We met just briefly before I went to Vietnam, and then we got together after I came home from Vietnam.
What were some of your responsibilities in Vietnam?
Well, we had several. We were in Da Nang, South Vietnam. That was our base camp. We had a perimeter that was set up around our base camp. I was a construction mechanic, so we had a shop, and we maintained all of the construction equipment that was used in Vietnam for building bridges and hospitals and runways. And every third night, we alternated our battalion. What I needed to do was we had a perimeter watch. So they had a perimeter that went around our base camp, and we had to protect the base camp at night. How
long was your tour of duty?
My tour of duty was 8 months. Seabees historically go to Vietnam 2 times. They normally have 2 8-month tours. But the length of service that I had, and at that time, I came back from Vietnam in July of we came back in August of 1969. That was around the time that the Vietnam War was starting to de-escalate, and what they were doing is they were decommissioning battalions, and a lot of people were being released early. I still had some time to serve, so I stayed in my battalion and I served until July of 1970.
And the final question is, how did the war affect you when you returned home?
Well, when we came home, it wasn't like it is today. The American public was not in support of the Vietnam War. Basically, when we came home, there were no parties, there were no parades, there were no recognition. There was a perception that when we were there, we were killing innocent people, which was not the case. It took many years after the Vietnam War for people to understand that, you know, we had a duty and responsibility to our country, and I'd like to believe that, you know, the things that the United States did in the late 60s, or I should say mid-60s, or early 70s, until the close of the Vietnam War in 1973, contributed to the country that Vietnam is today.
All right, thanks, Papa.
You're welcome.